Welcome to the continued podcast adventures of three opinionated guys with mics and too much free time. Strong enough to stop a speeding movie rumor, more powerful than a bad comic book event, able to waste hours of time asking stupid questions to people who have better things to do. It's Dave, Ben, and John. It's Superhero Speak.
Okay.
John?
Oh, yeah. Hi.
I'm sure he's busy on your Wikipedia page.
Wikipedia. Oh, God. Everybody goes to Wikipedia first. I'm trolling his Twitter feed.
Oh, it's even better.
The Wikipedia is it's weird. They don't let you update the information, even though the information is often wrong.
Yes.
Very weird thing about Wikipedia.
Yeah.
No.
And it could be like a page about you. And they're like, yeah, right. We know better.
Because you have to have a source to verify what you're putting on there. It's actually something that Chris Hardwick has complained about on the Nerdist. So when they want to update things on their Facebook page, their wiki page, they'll just say it in the podcast and then cite that episode as a source.
I should try that.
Yes.
That's awesome.
So anything you want to correct tonight, feel free.
All right. I'm actually a international assassin and a porn star. So neither of those things are on my Wikipedia page.
Oh, wow. I didn't realize.
Amazing. I'm updating it right now.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it.
Those things must be known.
All right. Well, we're already talking, but let's just do our normal little intro. Hey everyone! If you haven't figured it out yet, you're listening to Superhero Speak, and I'm your host Dave.
And John.
And this week we are sitting down with the first New York Times bestseller we've ever had on the show. He not only has he written for Marvel, he's also written big boy books without pictures in them. And I believe when I've looked at some of the stuff he's written, he's got a dark side. So maybe tonight we'll explore our dark side a little bit. And of course, I'm talking about the one and only Jonathan Maberry. Welcome to the show, sir.
Hi, guys. Thanks for having me on.
So, I guess, we usually kick these things off. One of the things I noticed about you right away, according to your Wikipedia page, you're from Philadelphia. We're Philly boys, so.
Yeah, I grew up in Kensington by the Tioga L stop in Philly, and fled in my early 20s. Lived in Bucks County near Doylestown for quite a number of years, and then moved to California about a year and a half ago.
Oh, okay.
Oh, wow.
But yeah, I'm a Philly native. I'm a Phillies fan. The Eagles have broken my heart many times.
Yes. Yeah, and you went to Temple. My daughter goes to Temple, so that's that's.
I went there and I taught there. I taught there for 14 years.
Oh, really?
I taught martial arts history, women's self-defense, and jiu-jitsu, different courses.
Oh, okay. I don't you weren't. I mean, she's going into her senior year, so
Nice.
But I don't think she didn't take any of those classes.
It's been a while since I've been there.
She's a psychology major, so.
Oh, nice. They have a great psychology department there.
Yes.
So one little plug at Temple University. In Philly, it gets no love. Nobody from Philly actually respects Temple University because I don't think they know how good it is. It's a moderately easy school to get into. It's a complete bitch to have to graduate from because they actually make you do work. Complete tough school that's respected everywhere but in its own hometown. So go Owls. I'm just saying that right now.
Yes. No, I didn't go there myself, but I definitely see that with my daughter that yes, it's easy to get in, it's hard to get out of.
Yeah.
Okay, so born and raised in Philly, was writing something you always wanted to do?
It is. I'm one of those people that always wanted to be a writer. When I was a little kid, before I could even actually read and write, I was telling stories with toys.
Mm-hmm.
Back then, G.I. Joe, which when I was a kid was 12 inches tall, long before the Greatest American Hero phase. And I always told stories. But I wanted to be a nonfiction writer, and that's what I became. I went to Temple University for journalism. I was a magazine feature writer. I wrote textbooks and how-to manuals and all sorts of things. And that was what I did most of my life, even though until I switched to fiction, that was part-time. My daytime gig was martial arts instructor.
Mm-hmm.
And, then I switched to fiction, and that not only became my full-time gig, but now it's pretty much all that I do is fiction. But yeah, I've always defined myself as a writer.
Oh, cool. So that since you started out in nonfiction, I'm kind of wondering how that fed into the fiction that you write.
There's actually a story about that.
Oh, okay.
Surprisingly, I I read a ton of stuff. I read all over the place. I read a lot of nonfiction, but I also read a lot of fiction. I grew up reading comics. I read science fiction, fantasy, horror. A couple of things kind of set the stage for me writing fiction. One is I had a really wonderfully spooky grandmother who believed in what she called the larger world. If you can imagine Luna Lovegood from the Harry Potter movies as a 90-year-old lady, that's my grandmother. And she was great. She believed in vampires and werewolves and hinky punks and ghouls and trolls, and taught me all about it, the folklore from all over the world, but also had me read about the science and archaeology and anthropology, so I would understand, what part of it was explainable and what part of it still remained a mystery. So that was part of it. Second part was when I was 10, my buddy and I snuck into the old Midway Theater, which is this big Art Deco theater, used to be near K&A in Philly. And we snuck in on October 2nd, 1968 to see the world premiere of Night of the Living Dead.
Mm-hmm.
My buddy split about halfway through that film and had issues with bedwetting probably into his 30s. I loved that film, saw it twice that night, went back like several more times. On the way home, I started telling myself, figuring out what I would do in that circumstance. I think that's the point at which I started doing my own mental version of, I guess, fan fiction, of figuring out what I would do in that situation, and it kind of stuck. The third part of this is when I was in middle school. I went to a school with a very low academic standard, John Paul Jones Junior High School. Terrible, terrible school back then. I don't know how it is now, but it was terrible back then. The librarian, they gave me to the librarian because I was showing up to classes and doing even marginal homework, it was ruining the curve for the other kids. So they took me out of regular classes and gave me to the librarian for 3 years for independent study. Except for math and gym, I was in the library for 3 years. And she fed me every kind of book possible. The real twist, though, is that she was a secretary for 2 different clubs of professional writers, one that met in Philadelphia and one that met in New York. So at 12, 13, 14, we're talking 1970, 71, 72, she's dragging me along to the meetings, and I'm meeting guys like Ray Bradbury, Richard Matheson, Harlan Ellison,
Holy moly.
And they really engendered within me a love of all kinds of storytelling, not just the type I was most drawn to. Some years later, when I decided to do something with the spooky stuff, I wrote several nonfiction books on the folklore of the supernatural. And while I was writing those books, I started looking for fiction that played with those kinds of folkloric monsters. And after bitching about the fact that I couldn't find any, my wife said, "Why don't you just try to write one?" So I thought back to all the things that Bradbury and Matheson had told me, kind of applied it, and I wrote my first novel. So it's a long-winded way of saying that's how a nonfiction guy got to write fiction.
No, that's great. So was that the Pine Deep trilogy, your first
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, my first novel was Ghost Road Blues, first book of the Pine Deep trilogy. And I wrote it just to see if I was any good at fiction. I had no idea whether I would complete it, no idea whether it was going to be good. Certainly didn't think it was going to sell, and didn't think it would go on to win awards and launch a fiction career. But, when you see the tide is moving in a certain direction, you got to go with it. So I just rolled with it, and man, it really worked out.
So I guess, number one, I guess you had to be, you're kind of already expressed it. You were nervous going into writing something like that, but you had already been doing nonfiction work. Did you get your publisher that you were already working with?
Oh no, my publisher for nonfiction, I was mostly small press stuff at first.
Okay,
and even the nonfiction folklore books, the first one I had sold on that subject was small press. So I had really no footprint in the major publishing world. I didn't have an agent. In fact, it was that book that got me my agent. So it was a complete game changer for everything that I did and knew in writing. And I never took any creative writing classes. I only took journalism. So I had to teach myself how to write fiction.
Wow, and so that was going to be my next question. Then, you didn't have any, training in it? Did you have anyone that you could bounce this off of while you're
Nope.
working on it?
No. By that point in my life, I didn't know any professional writers who wrote fiction. I only knew nonfiction people. So what I did, I'd read enough about the craft of writing to understand the different elements of it. So I self-taught. I took several novels that were in my genre. And my first novel, the Ghost Road Blues books, are what you call urban Gothic, or I'm sorry, rural Gothic. They're American Gothic,
Mm-hmm.
haunted small town. So I read Salem's Lot by Stephen King, Ghost Story by Peter Straub, Mystery Walk by Robert McCammon, and a couple other books. And I read them first as a reader, and then I reread them several times as a writer, deconstructing them, looking for the three-act structure, looking for the balance of dialogue to narrative, looking for pace and voice and figurative language and all the different elements of craft. I went looking specifically for how these writers did them, analyzed them, not tried to copy them because I didn't want to write like anyone else. I wanted to find my own voice, but I wanted to understand how skilled writers used these elements. And then when I sat down to write my book, I did a first draft that was clunky and awkward and way too long. And then I went back and I took one element of craft at a time and then focused on that to do a pass. So I would do one pass on chronology, one pass on voice, one pass on pace, and so on, until the book was as good as I could make it, and then I went looking for an agent.
About how long did that take?
Well, I kind of figured out a trick for finding a good agent. I had asked a couple of my writer friends, nonfiction writer friends, and by the way, during the process of writing the novel, I went to my first writers' conference, and I went up meeting some fiction people. And I started asking these people, how do you find an agent? And they all gave me the same advice. And as soon as I heard this advice, I realized it was really bad advice. They all said, look for a low or mid-level agent, because they're the only ones who would be willing to take a risk on a new writer. And I thought, wow, that's spectacularly stupid advice. That's me shouting to the world, I am mediocre, damn it, and mediocre is where I'm going to stay. And I thought that was just a bad business decision. Why would you start off with a weak hand? It's like asking the dealer in poker to deal you a couple of threes. Bad idea. So instead, I wrote a really good query letter. I studied the form of how to do it. I wrote a really good one, and I used a couple of resources, mostly publishersmarketplace.com, to search for agents who are making deals currently for the writers on my list of top writers in my genre. And I reached out to those agents. And the query letter was good enough that it got me noticed. It got them to read, some of them to read the book. And by the way, I offer that query letter to anyone who wants it, because it's now been tweaked by several agents and editors so that it's the kind of query letter they want to see come across their desk. And after I had submitted the book, you're supposed to wait like 3 months or 6 months or the rest of your natural life or some such nonsense for them to decide whether to respond to you. And again, I thought that's a bad business choice. So about 10 days in, I emailed the different agents and said, look, I'll be in New York next week. How about I swing by, take you out to lunch, see if we can do business together. Didn't ask them if they read my book, because I knew they hadn't. Didn't ask them if they liked it. Just say, let's have a business lunch. And I crammed on the history of each agent each week. Went up there, had to borrow money to get up there because I didn't have any money. Went up to New York, took the agents out one week after the other, and on the third time, the agent, she had crammed and read about 20 pages of my book that morning. But she liked what she read, and she liked my approach, and she liked the fact that I talked business, and I wound up having an agent. And she was with Trident Media at the time, which is one of the biggest agencies. And now she's in a boutique agency, but she's the number one or number two, depending on which week it is, number one or number two YA agent in the world. And she sold gobs of stuff for me. So it took to get the agent actually wound up taking me about 3 months.
How do you compare that to because I used to write short stories way back in the day and made submissions to Dragon magazine and such. And yeah, I've been through the writer's guide and all that and sending submissions out to places. But how do you compare that experience of trying to find an agent and work with the traditional publishing hierarchy to today where you can go to several different places that do allow self-publishing, most notably Amazon or something?
Right, Amazon, Smashwords, and a few others. I'm not against self-publishing, but I love to see writers get paid. It's a thing. Self-publishing, you have to spend a lot of time doing the promotion. You have to make sure the thing is edited really well. You have to get layout people. You have to get a really good cover, because most self-published book covers look like crap. They kind of mark you as self-published, which goes against your sales. There's a lot of things you have to do in self-publishing, and there's two problems with it. One, most people don't go through the steps to make sure their self-published work is as finely edited as possible. I'm not talking proofread. So I'm edited. Every book that I've ever published has benefited from the input from editors. I know that for a fact. No writer is the best final judge of their own work. It's never going to happen. So the editing process is important, because if you don't have the best possible book going out or story going out, it's doing a disservice to your readers. They're investing money expecting it to be good, and it could be something that has some structural flaws that you being so close, you can't see. So that's one thing. Second thing is, all the time that you spend doing all those things to edit, market, design, and so on, that's time you're not writing. And I think a writer should try their best to get a legitimate agent and try to get a conventional publishing deal if possible. It's not always possible, but they should try if possible.
Right. No, and it's funny because when you were talking about when you were writing your first novel and going over it and over it and over it, and making changes and making cuts, it reminds me of whenever I listen to Kevin Smith talk about when he's writing a script. He goes over it like 100 times. He keeps making cuts and changes until it feels right, and then he has other people start looking at it and making editorial suggestions and changes. And that's a time-consuming process, I would have to assume. And if you're not doing that and you're spending time trying to promote the book, it's going to take you longer to get your next book out.
Yeah. And there are a lot of things that draw time away for writers, even those who have conventional book deals. I mean, a good chunk of my day every day, it's other things other than writing. Social media, which I have to drive myself, contract stuff, discussions and business meetings. There's a lot of things that draw you away.
Annoying podcasts.
Actually, that's an oasis in the middle of a crazy day. I love podcasts. I have my own podcast too. I'm one of Three Guys with Beards podcast. Me, Christopher Golden, and James Moore. I'm a podcast junkie. I like being a guest, and I like having guests. So yeah.
Well, we here at Superhero Speak are fond of beards, and so
yes,
we're all for your podcast.
There you go. So anyway,
So how do you go from writing zombie stories to working with Marvel?
Well, it's kind of a zombie connection.
Mm-hmm.
My fourth novel, Patient Zero, which was the first of my Joe Jedger series, was on the stands, and it was doing really well. And even though it's a zombie book, it's not a zombie series. Each book is a different weird science threat. So Axel Alonso, who is the editor, who is still the editor-in-chief of Marvel, picked up a copy of that at an airport and read it on the plane. And when he got back to New York, he looked me up and called me and said, he identified himself. And by the way, I have friends who will punk me, so I was pretty sure I was being punked. I had been trying for a long time to figure the best way to do a pitch, because we didn't know how to do a comic book pitch. And he's out of the blue said, I read Patient Zero, I really love the book, love your dialogue, love your action. Would you have any interest in possibly writing for Marvel? That's one of those questions that it's almost hard to take serious. It's like, really, would I have any interest in possibly writing for Marvel? Let me think. As it turned out, I did have an interest. So I did freelance stuff for Marvel for about 6 years, and it was kind of an amicable split. Certainly not a closed door. It's just that right now I wanted to pursue creator-owned characters rather than theirs, and they're not doing a lot of creator-owned stuff at Marvel. I love some of what they're doing, but they're not doing creator-owned. So I did a project for Bad Blood. Mike Mignola, creator of Hellboy, had recommended that I have a conversation with Scott Alley, the editor-in-chief of Dark Horse. So we met at New York Comic Con a few years ago, had coffee, and he asked me to pitch something. So I pitched him a comic about a kid with leukemia fighting vampires. And he said, let's do it. We did it. And that was my first non-Marvel project. It was called Bad Blood. And from there, I started doing stuff for IDW Comics and doing whole bunch of stuff: comics, Rotten Ruin, and V Wars. I'm doing prose anthologies, editing them and co-writing some of them. I have a board game coming out from them, and they are actually out this week shopping a TV show based on one of my projects. So I'm doing a lot with IDW right now.
Oh, cool. Yeah, because I was actually I had known you from the what was it, the Punisher versus the Marvel Universe.
Yep. Yep.
And which kind of kicked off the whole zombie thing with Marvel.
Well, actually, let me explain how that works. Robert Kirkman, creator of The Walking Dead, actually started the Marvel Zombies thing.
Mm-hmm.
It was a subplot in Fantastic Four Unlimited
Ultimate, yes.
Fantastic.
Yes.
And then other writers have taken it and gone with it since. And I did I co-wrote one thing called Marvel Zombies Return with Seth Grahame-Smith, who did Pride and Prejudice and Zombies, Fred Van Lent, and David Wellington.
Okay.
And we co-wrote Marvel Zombies Return. But I had always wanted to do my own thing. I wanted to do something less zombie for Marvel and more 28 Days Later Fast Infected.
Right.
So I pitched, again, we were at a Comic-Con, Axel and I were at New York Comic-Con, and he said, pitch something to me, and I said, well, how about Marvel Infected? And I said, it's 28 Days Later in the Marvel Universe. And I said, I want to do it from the Punisher's point of view. The subtitle is Last Gun on Earth. And he bought it on the spot. And I wrote that, and it changed its name several times. We finally landed on Marvel Universe versus the Punisher because Marvel wanted the franchise, wanted to go further with it than just the Punisher story.
Right.
The Punisher one, had a great time with that. And then they invited me back to do a Wolverine one and an Avengers one. And there's some conversation about me going further, but right now, I wanted to focus on my own characters rather than Marvel characters, which I still love, but it isn't where I want to go in terms of comics, especially with the limited time I have to write comics now.
Right. Were you always a comic fan growing up?
My first comic was Fantastic Four number 66, What Lurks in the Beehive. That I bought that new off the stands a gazillion years ago. And so, back when comics were 12 cents.
Wow.
And yeah, so I grew up with Marvel. I did, I had put a foot into DC, largely the Denny O'Neil, Neil Adams run on Green Lantern, Green Arrow, which I friggin' loved. I collected everything that Jack Kirby did for DC, even Jimmy Olsen and Forever People, all that stuff. But I was predominantly a Marvel guy.
Yeah, I'm predominantly a Marvel guy, and John's predominantly a DC guy. So
yeah, I'm hurting right now.
So you had said they're shopping one of your projects around for a TV show. Now, if you can't give me details, that's fine. But
I can give you some.
Oh, okay. But so then can I ask which project?
It's V Wars.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's the setup there is there's a virus released from a melting polar ice that triggers a dormant gene, and that gene codes for vampirism. So we learned that vampires were not supernatural; they were an offshoot of Homo sapiens, and there are different versions of them. So if you look at world folklore, and again I'm tapping my folklore background, there are hundreds of different species of vampires in folklore. None of them resemble the Hollywood vampire. Nothing in folklore resembles the Hollywood vampire. So people start turning into whatever vampire is part of their strongest genetic ethnic background, and creates a race war, cultural war between humans and vampires. It started as a series of anthologies, the third of which will be coming out soon. I write the framing story, and I bring other writers in to write the individual stories. And then I did three series of comics. One 5-issue, which was actually 6. It's issue 0 through 5. That's the first graphic novel called Crimson Queen. And then I did 2 3-issue miniseries that were just recently collected in V Wars, All of Us Monsters. Right now, that's where as far as we plan to go with the comic because of my schedule. But IDW decided they really wanted to run with this, so they hired Tim Schlottman, who was the head writer for Dexter, to write a pilot script. Yeah, I know, and it's incredible, this pilot script. Oh my god! And he wrote a pilot script, and Circle of Confusion, the management company that did the Matrix movies, Mad Men, and The Walking Dead, partnered with IDW to take this out and shop it. So they're going out either this week or early next to shop it to stations at one of the cable stations. We don't know. I don't know who yet. I'm not part of that thing. You know, I own the property or co-own the property with IDW, but they have their own media division that's out there in the trenches doing the shopping.
Right.
So I'm just sacrificing goats at midnight, lighting candles to Cthulhu, hoping that they get a good deal.
Well, I mean, yeah, I guess, but that would be my next question would be, where would your dream network be? Would it be something like an HBO or something like Sci-Fi?
I would definitely like a network where we can push some buttons, because we got intense violence, there's sex in the stories, there's harsh language, so it's certainly not going to go on a Nickelodeon. Like AMC would be good because of what the freedom they allow Mad Men and so on.
Right.
FX, HBO, Showtime. I mean, any of those would be ideal. Sci-Fi could do it. Because they took some risks with Battlestar Galactica and they did a great job. So a lot of it would depend on whether they're going to, if they would want to make a step back to the level of quality storytelling they did with Battlestar, which is one of my all-time favorites.
Yeah, no, I don't know what happened to Sci-Fi after Battlestar.
They slashed all the budgets. That's why.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, and it's a shame too because I mean the thing that made Sci-Fi so great were the shows like that, like Battlestar, which is a gold standard for science fiction television. And I don't know whether they didn't pay attention to their own success or not, but it's not like the door's closed. They can certainly do that again, and I got a feeling that's the direction they're going to want to turn pretty soon. They'll with their movies they'll still do the Sharknadoes and all that stuff. And
yeah,
everybody takes those movies as comedy anyway. It's what we have since Mystery Science Theater went off the air, and they know it. I mean, Tara Reid is a scientist in Sharknado. That's all you need to know. But with TV series, I've heard rumors that they're going to go back to taking some risks and competing with some of the other series on basic cable, and I think that will be to their benefit because everyone wants them to. Everyone wants the Sci-Fi Channel to go hardcore sci-fi again.
Yeah, that's true. I'm one of those people. So best case scenario, it gets picked up to be a show. How involved do you want to be with the production of the show?
Well, pretty involved, but I say that, but I need to kind of preface it in that there are a lot of writers out there who get in the way of their own success or get in their own way by trying to be control freaks with their subject matter. Mm-hmm. TV is not a book. TV is not a comic. So I can't expect them to do a TV show that exactly mirrors my book because it's a different medium and it's driven by different types of reactions between the viewer and the creators. Given that, I'm willing to, I've already seen some of the stuff Tim Schlottman's done, changes he's made to make it more effective for television. He knows that I approve of those kind of changes and that I'm not going to try to tell him his business.
Right.
That said, I do want to learn that aspect of it. And somewhere down the road, I would love to be able to write an episode of the show, maybe more. I'm actually in the process right now of attempting my first pilot script for something based on one of my books. I'm writing a pilot for Ghost Road Blues.
Cool. And it's funny because when I think about series of books that get turned into TV shows, I think there's two really good examples you can look at. Is start with obviously the most popular show right now, Game of Thrones, where George R.R. Martin is pretty involved with that show. And up until the last season, the shows were very close to the books, very mirrored, hand in hand. And then the opposite side of the coin, and John can back me up on this one, is the Dresden Files by
Jim Butcher.
Jim Butcher, yes, Jim Butcher.
They had to change a lot for that.
Yeah, they when Sci-Fi did the short-lived Dresden Files TV series, it was nothing like the book. And
which is a shame because I do agree that sometimes you make changes and they're for the better. Dexter was better as a TV series.
Right.
Much as I love Charlene Harris, her Sookie Stackhouse books, if they had put them directly on TV, would never have been as popular as True Blood was.
True.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes not to say the books were weak, the books were different and they wouldn't have appealed to an HBO audience.
Mm-hmm.
So they made the changes that would appeal to an HBO audience, which in turn, by the way, sold a crap ton of her books. So, she loves it. And she's a friend, and she recommended to me when this whole process started, she said, honey, cash the checks and smile. So, there's that. There are times when they take source material and it's clear the people making decisions haven't read it.
Right.
I mean, I can understand making changes if you read it and you have a different vision for television. I don't think they read Jim Butcher's books.
No.
Because the Dresden Files books are kick-ass. And they did not it's a shame because Paul Blackthorne was a good choice for Harry Dresden.
Yeah.
But they didn't give him enough to work with. And I think the same was true of Constantine. I didn't like the way they did the show. I just didn't think they caught the pulse of that comic series, which is, by the way, one of my favorite ongoing DC titles. I was a Hellblazer fan from way, way back.
Yeah, I don't think I've seen a depiction yet that really shows how torn he is. How tortured he is of a person.
Well, also it was a big problem with. I mean, even in the comic books, okay, yeah, he was tortured. Yeah, he was a bastard sometimes. But you found yourself rooting for him. He was likable on a level, and then in the TV show there was none of that. So you're just sitting there watching this guy bumble through stuff instead of really outsmarting them and giving you a reason to root for him. He was just kind of a complete and utter bastard.
Yeah, and he's just a little too much of a snarky, smart-ass one-liner guy for the show. Yeah. And again, I say I don't think they read the source material.
Right.
That book evolved in pretty deep storytelling over the years. If they had read into it, they would have seen, the heart of that story, and I don't think that they did. And it's different because there are other TV shows, superhero TV shows, that I think they're getting right. I actually love The Flash and I love Arrow.
Yes.
I'm one of the people. I have arguments with my friends. I love Gotham. I love Gotham.
Oh dear.
Say this about that. The show has its flaws, yes.
Yeah.
It's a first season. If you remember, the first season of Angel was not good.
Yeah.
The first season of Star Trek Next Generation sucked.
Yep.
Sometimes you have to let something get its sea legs. Toward the end of the season, when they started, going a little more into the dynamic of really showing character growth, I think that's when they started realizing this is the flavor, and I really have high hopes for the second season. And by the way, I just met the whole cast down in the Comic Palooza in Houston. Great people, and they seem pretty excited about what's coming up too, even though they couldn't talk about it.
Cool.
Very cool. But there's another problem that TV series that are based on books run into. It's the old manga filler problem, where you catch, like Game of Thrones is going through this now. The series catches up to where the author is because you can't bang out books as quick as somebody can bang out a synopsis of your book and then throw it through a couple of episodes. And so you get up to that point, and then things start to really diverge, or you do the Japanese anime thing where you just have a whole ton of filler.
Walking Dead's kind of a good example. They keep diverging from that. They wander back to the comics every once in a while, but I'm okay with them diverging from the source material after a point because I know where it's going to end in the comics or the novels. I want to be surprised when I watch TV. That's why I'm kind of dreading them bringing in Negan, because I know they're going to have to in Walking Dead, but there are a lot of other stories they can tell, and I've liked some of the other stuff that they've told.
Right. I think what's fascinating about Game of Thrones, John, saying that they're caught up but George Martin has given them an outline and told them how the whole thing should end, in case he doesn't ever finish the novels. So I think it's an interesting concept that we might actually see now the show show us something first and then have a novel come out later, which could be different, could be the same,
Well, they did that with Justified. I mean, I don't know if you ever watched the show Justified. It was based on a couple of short stories by Elmore Leonard, and he liked the TV version so much that he wrote a novel called Raylan that essentially adapted the TV episodes written by someone else. into a novel that was better than the original source short stories.
Based on a TV show, which was based on a novel, which was based on the author's original work.
It sounds weirdly inbred. Now, and by the way, as far as Game of Thrones go, I love the show. I hope there's no spoiler. Hope nobody listening has failed to watch the season finale, because I'm going to throw a spoiler in. There's no frigging way Jon Snow is dead. I think we can all do that. Here, aside from the fact that his eyes turn purple and the related groundwork, the series is called A Song of Ice and Fire. He's ice. Daenerys is fire. Those kids are going to get married at the end of the series. I will bet a stack of money on it.
Isn't it reported, though, that George R. R. Martin actually told President Obama that he actually confirmed to him that Jon Snow was gone?
Well, no. He said he's definitely dead. He didn't say he was gone. Since when does dead mean anything in popular culture?
Come on.
True. Especially where there are ice zombies involved.
Death of Wolverine, death of Nightcrawler. Superheroes are closer to zombies than anything else. Those sons of bitches, you can't kill them.
We saw Agent Coulson die in the Avengers movie.
That's right.
And now he has a TV show, so come on.
It's a magical place.
Yes.
Yeah, no, I kind of feel... I think you're right. That's kind of what I felt, I think, from season 1, is that he's destined, him and I can't think of her name. Daenerys are destined to be together and be the king and queen. Like, it's just
the only honorable people in the whole damn series.
Right. Exactly.
Unless George is really going to screw us over and have the bad guys completely win, they have to win. Otherwise, we're all going to be villagers with pitchforks and torches at his place, because he's led us astray, and he's a Sith Lord, something like that.
Yeah, well, he was kind of heavy in that last interview.
Oh, nice.
Oh yes, no, it's it's an interesting time, I think.
It is.
I
just came from seeing Ant-Man, by the way.
Right. I was going to say we're living in an age where not only do we have a lot of great fiction from books and other sources being done on television, in the movies, we're also living in a time where digital effects have gotten so good that we can, they can be fully realized on the screen. And I don't think I've ever thought I would live in a time where an Ant-Man would get a feature film.
No, that sounds like the punchline to an SNL skit. But and it's great too. And they're going to do Doctor Strange. They're going to do Black Panther. They're going to do, Luke Cage and Iron Fist, for God's sake. I read on TV, but still. And they killed it with Daredevil. My God, I love that show.
Yeah, actually just saw this today. Speaking of Daredevil and Doctor Strange, they have confirmed that Daredevil will be in the Doctor Strange movie.
Oh, nice. The TV. The TV
now,
one?
One of the things about Marvel is if the character is in their universe and is either on TV or film, it's the same actor.
Yes.
Yeah.
DC gets that wrong. They should never have cast someone other than Grant Gustin as the Flash. The kid is the Flash.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And by the way, I was just at Comic-Con. I got to meet him. I got to meet a lot of these folks at either Comicpalooza in Houston and at Comic-Con. And I'm really sold on Grant Gustin as the Flash. He is the Flash. He's friggin' great.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely, I don't know, maybe I haven't had the pleasure of meeting him, and maybe it's just the way the show is done and the source material, but he definitely comes off as somebody who truly enjoys what he's doing and truly enjoys the character he's playing.
It's very evident when you meet him, too. He's having a blast. I mean, his last gig was Glee, for God's sake.
Oh, yeah.
He's the Flash, and he's great as the Flash. So, yeah, fantastic.
With the exception of Hellblazer, their TV casting people seem to be pretty good at picking people that are good for the shows and embody the characters.
Stephen Amell is fantastic as the Arrow, and they're gonna. I know they're gonna cast someone else as the Arrow for the movies. How stupid is that? Come on, you got the perfect guy playing the Arrow. I don't know. It drives me crazy. I think Marvel's doing it. There are some things DC does really well, and there are some things Marvel does really well, and they should copy each other's strengths, if nothing else, to please us fans.
Well,
right.
Yeah. Well, I think DC, like the animated the DC animation people
Yeah.
are like on top of the game. I
Oh
think
yeah.
they beat Marvel constantly,
Yeah.
but Marvel's killing it in the the TV and the movies, and it's kind of sad because that's where they make the real money.
Well, right now I'd say that I don't know. I think DC's doing better TV than Marvel. I mean, except for Daredevil, which is so far my favorite TV superhero show ever. But Flash and Gotham and Arrow, I really, really love. Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., I keep wanting to love. It got better second season, but I'm still waiting for it to stop being a bad James Bond and become a really good superhero show. Throw some budget at them, for Christ's sake.
Well,
Yeah.
that's actually something we've talked about on the show a few times too. Is and I wanted to ask you. So you said it. You wanted to be a superhero show, but they kind of tried to say at the beginning this wasn't going to be a superhero show. It was going to be.
And when they said that, I remember saying to a friend of mine, like, well, that's a mistake.
Yeah, I believe the press release said no capes.
Yeah, well, a few capes would be really good right up about now. You know?
Yeah.
Well, no capes. That was the line from Smallville.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
It's essentially the same what they're doing. I mean, if it's not an actual statement, then it's a policy with Shield. Is there they need superheroes? I loved it when they had the Absorbing Man in there. I loved it. I love the fact they have Deathlock in there. They could do more with him.
Right.
Give me some more. You got 7,000 characters in Marvel. Not all of them are under license for TV or for movies, rather.
Right. And not only that, I think the sad part is it kind of became their ground for their area for introducing concepts and linking things together as opposed to letting it stand on its own,
Right.
I mean, you have Mockingbird on the show, for goodness sake. Let her be Mockingbird.
Yeah.
You're introducing the Inhumans. Okay, well, let's do something with that, not
Yeah, let's put them all in civilian clothes and not make them look like the Inhumans.
right.
I don't know. Yeah, I could rant on the subject for a while. So.
So could we.
What did you think of Ant-Man? Oh,
Yeah,
sorry.
we actually do have a culture of superhero movies and television stuff that is so far. Even the bad stuff is superior to most of the earlier superhero TVs. I mean, like, look at the Spider-Man TV show that was on when I was in my teens.
I remember that one.
Oh my God! Even the Hulk, which a lot of people remember with great affection because of Bill Bixby, was not a great show. I mean, it was a human drama. It was basically The Fugitive with green paint and muscles. It's the same premise, but it wasn't the Hulk.
Right.
I was reading comics. That wasn't the Hulk. I now when I see a superhero movie, I'm seeing some approximation of what came out of the comics. The Hulk picks up a tank and beats somebody with it. Okay, he does that. Cool. Yay.
Right. Yeah, and actually, so like John just said, what did you think of Ant-Man?
Oh, I love that man. It was exactly what I thought it was going to be. It was lighthearted. It was charming, and I wanted a charming film. Sometimes you want something that is not mired in gravitas.
Right.
Paul Rudd is fantastic as Scott Lang. Michael Douglas as Henry Pym, perfect. And one of the things, they do some very nice subtle things in there. What we call Easter eggs. They'll make reference to some of his past stuff, so that that he at one point Hank Pym was actually Ant-Man at one point,
right.
Just a long time ago. So they don't pretend that mythology didn't happen. They just give you a reason for them to reboot it. So overall, thought it was great, and it had some great funny bits into it. Great technology. I give it two serious thumbs up.
Yeah. It's funny because when we were talking about the CG earlier, I loved the scene in the past when it's supposed to be like 1989, and you have Michael Douglas as Hank Pym walking into the CIA building or whatever it was, and he looked like Michael Douglas from 1989.
Yeah, that was pretty cool. It was also nice to see Haley Atwell there. That was a nice. Yes. And the Avenger. Single Avenger, I'm not going to say who because some people haven't seen it yet. Cameo fight scene was great. Love that.
Yes.
So yeah.
Yeah, I mean it was funny. I'll repeat one of the things I heard today. Listening to Paul Rudd was actually on the Nerdist, and Chris Hardwick said one of the things he kind of liked about it is it's a superhero movie that wasn't too big. Haha. But and it's.
But that works as a statement, though. It is exactly that.
Right. It's not because after Avengers 2, when it was the entire world and explosions everywhere and, just craziness, this was more, it was, this is no spoiler. I mean, been talking about this from the beginning. It's a heist movie, and it has that feel to it,
Yeah, and it's a very successful one. And one of the things, he doesn't just pop a gadget out and solve a problem. They actually show him problem solving.
Right.
So you get involved in the intelligence of the character, and I was there. It sold me. Yes, it's still comic book, but people say that as if it's a bad thing, and to me, that's a good thing. They did a really good comic book of Ant-Man in the movies, and I'm all for it. 2 thumbs up.
Yeah, I'm all for any superhero movie that doesn't do ex machina itself out of a corner every time the writer gets into trouble.
Yeah,
it's nice to see intelligent characters that think their way out of the box instead of, oh, I suddenly learned how to a new power or something, or
and you don't see him becoming a martial arts master after 6 minutes.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Damn montages.
Yeah. Now, a couple other things, like they showed when I was there, they showed the coming attraction, a new coming attraction I hadn't seen before for Fantastic Four, the 3rd trailer.
Mm-hmm.
I'm actually starting to get a little excited about it. I know all the reasons why people hate, the new Fantastic Four. They're too young. They're too this. They're too that. I kind of don't care. Let them be young enough to grow into the role if the movie's successful. I like the special effects. I like the setup of Interdimensional. Still don't like Doctor Doom. And he's my favorite villain of all time.
Mm-hmm. I
don't think anyone has ever attempted to do Doctor Doom right, and it doesn't look like they're doing it right either.
No.
But the rest of it looks pretty good to me. Much, much, much better than Rise of the Silver Surfer, which pissed me off in so many ways. And starting with Galactus, it's like, really, that's Galactus?
Yeah.
Angry cloud. Galactus is an angry cloud.
Well, they borrowed it. It was left over from the Green Lantern movies, so
Yeah.
Well, I think the issue there, not to defend Fox too much, but when that came out, we were still in the early days of these superhero movies, and I think they were afraid to show a giant guy in a purple suit as Galactus.
Of course they were. But now you've got a new chance at Fantastic Four. I like what I saw. I will definitely watch the film with an open mind.
Yeah.
It's interesting because at Comic-Con I got to see, the Suicide Squad trailer and the new Batman versus Superman trailer. And the Suicide Squad one, that was a comic I hadn't read. So
Mm-hmm.
I only know some of the characters. I don't know who Enchantress is, and I don't know who Katana is. But I actually did like Jared Leto's take on the Joker. I think that last scene was chilling as hell. I'm not going to kill you. I'm just going to hurt you very, very, very bad. It's like, damn. So yeah, it's not the Joker. But then again, I grew up with Cesar Romero, and he wasn't. He's not exactly what they intended.
Right.
And I do think the Joker is going to wind up being Jason Todd.
Yeah, I just saw that theory today.
Yeah, and it makes sense, But the thing that I'm most excited about, and I wasn't originally, is Batman versus Superman. I friggin' love that trailer.
Yeah, that took me by surprise too. With there was actually a reason that Bruce Wayne was pissed at Superman, and it's the same reason that all the people who watched the movie were pissed. Where he just, you're gonna have a super fight in the middle of a city. Good job.
I think my favorite part of that trailer was seeing Batman use a cable gun.
Yeah.
And just be on the corner of a building, put his arm out, shoot the gun, and swing away. It's like, yes, there you go. Was that so hard?
You can see all the things they stripped out of Dark Knight Returns, including the instead of the League of Guys dressed as Batman, it's a League of Guys dressed as Superman.
Yes, yeah.
And that's what Batman's fighting when he's in his steampunk armor or whatever costume he had. But I am one of those people. Maybe there's only 6 of us who actually think Ben Affleck is going to friggin' nail it as Batman.
I said this before. I'm going to say it again. The newest trailer made me feel better about Ben Affleck being Batman.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Totally sold me. That scene when he's standing there or kneeling there holding the little girl and looking up.
Right.
Just that one frame sold me on him as Batman. And the whole little the thing with Alfred, the thing that turns a good man cruel.
Mm-hmm.
That's a freaking great line. They give Alfred some of the best lines in these movies.
Yes.
So yeah, I'm all in on that one, and I think it's one of those things. He's going to Michael Keaton it. He's going to do what Michael Keaton did. Everyone, I remember all my friends, they were ready to burn their Batman collections because Michael Keaton was going to be Bat Guy. And then they saw the movie and they're like, "Yeah, I believed all along." It's like, no, you didn't. You lied.
Everyone said it about Heath Ledger playing the Joker. Like, that's
yeah. That's another thing. Like, how could he be scary? How could Pretty Boy be scary? It's like, well, it's called acting.
Right.
There's this thing now. So I'm really psyched about all the superhero and so on movies, and it's such a good time for me too, because I said I got the V-Wars thing going to TV, my Joe Jedger series is going to TV, and I've got a zombie movie in development, and I actually think they can do them all justice now, because what I'm seeing in Hollywood is a greater respect for the source material, and more importantly, a greater respect for the audience. They don't think the audience can handle it. Now they know the audience demands a certain level of true pop culture integrity.
Right. As the kid who snuck in to see Night of the Living Dead
at 10, yep.
At 10 years old, you definitely sound like you're happy where things are today.
I'm really happy where things are today.
So
I'm having a great time. So you figure, look at my life. I get to make stuff up for a living. I get to meet the culture world. I get to meet, I've met everyone from Stephen King to Ben Affleck. I get to meet all these folks, and this is my friggin' job. If this is a dream and somebody wakes me up, I'm going to kick their ass. Oh my God! So yeah, this is, as far as I go, this is the age of the geek, man. Nerd cool.
Jonathan,
it's a new golden age.
Jonathan, it's time to wake up. Jonathan.
No.
I'm a little weapon. I can kill you more ways you know how to do it. Just warning you now.
So as we're getting near the end here, you've given a lot of good pointers and tips, but what's the one main piece of advice you give to somebody who wants to get into writing?
Well, actually, I can't give one. I'll have to give two, because I got one from Matheson and one from Bradbury.
Okay.
When I was a kid, Bradbury told me writers should always help other writers.
Oh, that was on your Twitter feed.
It was, and it's something that I say a lot. Writers should help other writers. Shouldn't put a price tag on it. Shouldn't expect anything in return. And you definitely should not be a jackass. It's really important. It's like 10 Commandments from Bradbury Matheson. Rule 1 is don't be a jackass. Rule 2 is see Rule 1, and Rules 3 through 10 are don't be a jackass said louder. So that's my first bit of advice. Be a good guy and help other writers. The second thing, and this is really from Matheson, writing is an art. It's a conversation between you and the reader. Publishing is a business that sells copies of art. It is not about art. Don't confuse the two, but be good at both. If you're good at business and good at your craft of writing, you're going to get somewhere. If you are good at writing and expect the business to simply publish something and promote it because you wrote it and therefore it must be the most magical thing ever, you really need therapy. Writing is the conversation. To get to have that conversation with the reader, you need to understand how publishing works, work within it, and then you get to have the conversation, and you get to write all day long. You get to play inside your imagination and get paid for it. But you got to understand that there's no obligation of publishing to do anything for you. They're in business to sell copies of stuff.
Right.
So write the stuff they can sell copies of. If you want to write something that is, just deeply personal and doesn't have a genre and won't fit on a shelf, fine. Write it and self-publish it, and God bless. But if you want to get into the biz, learn how the biz works. Be good at your craft, be good at the business of publishing, and you're going to be one happy writer.
Cool. All right. And what are anything in particular that you're promoting right now?
Yeah, actually, I have my new Joe Jedger book, Predator 1, came out a couple of months ago. It's the 7th in the series.
Mm-hmm.
It's tearing it up, especially since everything I wrote in it was about drones, and I went science fiction, but every damn thing I put in there that I thought was science fiction is showing up in the headlines now. So if you want to scare the crap out of yourself, read Predator 1. But also, next Tuesday, I have my first X-Files anthology. I edited X-Files, Trust No One, the first of a series of anthologies from being published by IDW. All new original stories of the X-Files, and they're all official X-Files canon, proved by Chris Carter and Fox. So,
Wow.
these are real, genuine X-Files stories, fit into the chronology of the X-Files, and they're incredible. I was so fortunate to get such a great lineup of writers. And the book hits regular bookstores on Tuesday and comic book stores on Wednesday.
Well, as a X-Files fan, I am definitely going to go ahead to pick that up.
It's a killer.
Cool. All right. And then John's mentioned it a couple times, but where can people find you online, like on Twitter and whatnot?
As long as I spell my name right, I'm easy to find. My last name is spelled Maberry. So it's Jonathan Maberry. You look, I'm on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. I have a website, JonathanMaberry.com. Just basically look up Jonathan Maberry with my name spelled right, and you get all the social media. And I do my own social media. I'm not one of those people that hire someone to do it, even though I have an assistant. I like the social media. I devote 10 minutes out of every hour to social media when I'm writing. So I really dig the conversations, and if you're reaching out to me on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram, it's actually me.
Yes, I can attest to that because I reached out and said, "Hey, you want to do the show?" And you said yes. So there you go. All right. Cool. Well, I think that's a good place to put in a pin in it for this week. So, Jonathan, thank you again for doing the show.
Oh, this was great. You guys make it a lot of fun.
Oh, we try. We try anyway. We're good at fooling people.
No, you guys do a great job. I'm very happy. This was a lot of fun.
Oh, cool. Thanks.
That's the whole point of it.
And as we say each and every week, boys and girls, don't let your cape get caught in the door. Have a good week.
Okay, now it's my turn. Okay, what are you doing? Taking over Dad's mic so I can be part of superhero speak. Duh. Well, there are better ways to join the conversation. Really? Like what? Well, you can interact with them on Facebook, Twitter, Google+, and even Pinterest. Wait, people use Pinterest? And what's Google+? I don't know, something to do with circles. Anyway, you can also see all their posts, including comic book videos, on their website, where you can also sign up for their mailing list. Cool! Yep, are you still going to try to hijack Dad's mic? Nope, I'm going to try to answer the stump the key question. Nice. So who do you think would win in a fight between Rainbow Dash and Squirrel Girl? Oh, that's a hard one. Oh no, Dad's waking up. My lives!
Oh, what are you guys doing? That cape's gonna get caught in the door.